me double check here. Yes, I see us now. It's not telling me we're live, but I see us on my computer, so. Okay, so I think we can go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad to be able to greet you this morning and talk a little bit about what we've been doing this week and what we're going to be doing tomorrow and how we celebrate and why we celebrate. And so we have some questions for you, and we're hoping that you will write in answers to your questions. We're going to give you a little more time than we did last week to have a conversation with us, and so welcome. Caitlin?
Yes, so I hope you've had a good week, and maybe you can tell us if you did the challenge that I asked last week with the sidewalk chalk. You can write that in. We've got a couple people watching, so yeah, hope you all had a good week in self-isolation at home.
So last week when we met, we heard a story. I shared a story about Jesus coming into Jerusalem on a donkey, and all of the people had come together to welcome him, and they threw down their garments and they threw down palms, and it was a big celebration, remember? And he came in as a king, but we talked about how he looked like a different kind of king than we might expect. The donkey is a very humble, sturdy kind of animal, not very royal like we would think, remember? And then so much has happened this week in our story, because in Holy Week, we're getting so much closer to Easter. And so I wanted to share a little about what has been happening for Jesus this week, what we've been remembering that he has gone through for us. So Jesus arrived in Jerusalem and he was welcomed, and Jesus went, he spent some time this week with his closest friends. And I'm a little jealous, I'm not going to lie. I was a little jealous that Jesus got to be with his friends this week, because my friends and I had to meet like this on the computer. But Jesus met in a room, and he and his friends did things together that they always did together. They got to share a meal together. And he told them, he took bread and he blessed it and he gave thanks to God for it. And he broke that bread and he gave it to his friends, and they shared the bread. And he said, when you do this, when you share this bread like this, you're doing it to remember me and to remember what I have taught you. And then he took a cup of wine and he did the same thing. He blessed the wine, he gave thanks for it, and he shared that cup of wine with his friends. And he said the same thing. When you share this, you're remembering that this is part of the promise. This reminds you of the promises I am making to you, which is I'm always going to be here. I'm always going to love you, even if you can't see me. And they shared the cup. And then Jesus did this really neat thing. Another thing that you would not expect a king to do is Jesus took a towel from one of the servants, and he tied it around his waist, and he knelt down and he washed the feet of his friends. I wonder if you can remember, if you can imagine washing your friends' feet, and whether you like having your feet exposed, like if you like to show your feet, or if you get a little nervous showing your feet. I don't mind it. I don't mind my feet. And so Jesus washed their feet. And he did it to show them how to love each other, that you can take those dirty, dusty, toe jam, fuzzy feet and you can hold them and you can wash them and you can tell your friends that you love them enough to kneel before them and clean them. And then after Jesus had done that, one of his friends, whose name is Judas, one of his friends betrayed him, and betrayed him meaning they went and told the police that this is where the police were looking for Jesus, and this one friend told the police where they could find Jesus. And so that Judas proved not to be a very good friend to Jesus. And the police came and they arrested Jesus, and they charged him with these things that he didn't do. They accused him of things that he didn't do. And so Jesus and some of his friends who he had just had supper with went into custody. He was taken away by the police, and his friends kind of followed along behind, but not too closely, because the friends were really afraid. The friends were really afraid that they would get arrested also. And so they stood by and they let Jesus be accused, and they let Jesus be charged and sentenced to die. The rules were that he would have to die. And so the police and the people in charge made Jesus carry a cross. Back when Jesus lived, one of the ways that people were punished was that they would be tied or hung on a cross. And it was a really awful way to be punished. It was really, really painful. And it was humiliating. It was embarrassing. It was very shameful. And they made Jesus carry the cross from where he was arrested and charged across the city and to the place where they were going to put him on that cross. And they put nails in his hands and in his feet, and they put him on the cross. And he was hung on that cross with two other men who were charged with criminals. And his friends looked on, and his mother came and was at his feet. She never left his side. And he cried out to God and said, why does this have to happen? And then he died. And that's what we celebrated yesterday on Good Friday. We remembered yesterday that Jesus was hung on that cross and that Jesus died on that cross. And it's a really sad day. It's a really tough day, but it's also really beautiful, because some of Jesus's followers, some of the people who thought he was a great teacher and a great leader and had been there with him when he died, they came and they took him off of the cross and they treated his body with so much love. They anointed him. They put oils on him and spices so that would help them smell nicer. And then they found a tomb, and a tomb is kind of like a cave, and it had never been used. And they put Jesus, they wrapped him in cloth and all of those oils, and they put him in the tomb. And that's what happened yesterday. So for the disciples and for us right now, we're remembering that Jesus died, and they don't know that anything else is happening except that their friend and their leader is gone, and they are sad and they miss him, and they're embarrassed and ashamed of how they behaved, that they couldn't stand up and speak for their friend when he was being accused of things that they knew he didn't do, because they were too afraid to speak up. And so they're having a really tough time. But tomorrow, I know you know what tomorrow is. Tomorrow is Easter, and we celebrate the resurrection. And that means that's the day we remember that some women came to Jesus's tomb where he was buried, to the cave, and they rolled back the stone, and they saw that the stone was rolled away and Jesus wasn't in the tomb. They learn and are told that Jesus was raised from the dead. He is living, but not in the way that we think, not physically there with them in his old body, but that he lives with them in their hearts and in each other and all around them. And so that's what we're celebrating tomorrow, is that Jesus lives. And so the big story, so much happens. And I think that Caitlin has some questions for you. And I'm hoping you will write in your answers on the slide, or your questions, or hope that you will respond to Caitlin's questions by maybe mommy or daddy can type in your answers for us.
We've only got a few people on right now, but I'll ask the questions and you can rewatch this later and you can still comment and we will still be reading your responses and replying to them. So our first one is, I wonder if you've ever seen the Lent colors in the church. So Carrie, do you want to maybe explain a bit about the Lent colors?
Yeah. So you remember when we were in the church meeting every Sunday, one of the things I would ask you before the services started or before you went down with Caitlin to Kids Club was what colors were hanging on the walls behind the altar, what colors were hanging from some of our, like from our pulpit where I preach. And so in Lent, there's a very specific color, and it's a color of that we think of royalty, and royalty being like kings, right? And it's also it's a somber color. It's purple.
So no responses yet, so I'll move on to the second question. It is, I wonder what part of Lent you like best.
And so you remember that Lent was a time when we were getting ready. We were preparing for this week and for tomorrow, right? The story we just heard, we've been preparing for 5 weeks plus this week. That's 6 weeks.
Big week.
Big week.
Our next question is, I wonder what part of Lent is the most important. Tough question.
Tough question. And I'm not going to answer that. I'm hoping that you guys will watch this and maybe share your answers when you come online.
Our next question is, I wonder how sadness and happiness can come together to make joy.
I wonder if, with that, as you guys are thinking about that question, if you remember some of the tasks that Caitlin invited you to do this week, where you're sad that you can't be with your friends and visit your family, and wonder if you did any of the chalk drawings, or if you put signs in your windows, or if you had done any of those things. And I wonder if you know what kind of joy that makes people feel when they see those signs, or what kind of joy you feel when you see those signs on the street.
Our next one is, I wonder where joy comes from.
These were hard questions this week. I wonder where joy comes from.
They're deep questions, that's for sure.
It's a good one for you guys. I'm really excited to hear how you guys think of that one. I wonder where joy comes from. For me, I think joy comes when I know that I'm loved, when I know that I'm accepted for exactly who I am. Joy comes when I can see that I made somebody else happy by something I've said or something I've done, and they're appreciating what I did, and I can see it on their face. That makes me feel joyful also.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I think for me, I really like doing the kids club at church, and I like to see when I have an impact on the kids and they're learning from my teaching and I make them smile. So that's what brings me joy. And
Awesome.
our last question is, I wonder, how do we know when joy is here? That one sort of ties together with the last one.
Mhm. I think that's a really good one for us to think about tomorrow too. What is it when we are celebrating Easter, and at what point did you feel that joy? I wonder.
So we don't have any responses so far, but I can move on to our final little weekly challenge. So for this week, I challenge you to send out an Easter message, maybe virtually, to your family and friends, and just maybe even discuss with them some of these important questions that we asked today and just wish them a happy Easter. That's my challenge for this week. And let us know if you complete this challenge. Like I said, we'll be looking at the comments on our live stream and you can rewatch it after.
Excellent. So we are going to be celebrating Easter tomorrow, as I said, and we're going to do that super early. We're going to do it at 6:15 in the morning as the sun is just starting to come up. We're going to light a fire outside of the church to represent new light, and I will be missing all of you being with us and hoping that you are finding moments of joy in your day and in your week. And I wish you all a very happy Easter.
Yes, happy Easter. I hope you have a great weekend.
We'll see you next Saturday.
Yes, see you next week.